Good evening, how are you? Well, I'm in Manhattan and I came up here to meet with a bunch of prosecutors, really to participate more like an audience in the presentation of 7 different trials. And I won't go into them except to make a couple of special points about the kinds of prosecutors that you want to have. And that is people who do justice. When I was an assistant U.S. attorney, if somebody had evidence that a person had not committed a crime, we dedicated ourselves to finding out the truth. And if it was that there had been an innocent person prosecuted or for whatever reason, we would go back to either retry it or dismiss it. You don't see that today. It's a win-win proposition. It's not that you win when you do justice. It is that you win by winning no matter what, and that's wrong. So, for example, when I was a law clerk in the Second Circuit, they were trying the first Watergate case, and a prosecutor named Rusty Wing was trying the case. And I was in an office for clerks in the Court of Appeals, and next door to me was Judge Lee Gagliardi. He was overseeing that case, and he asked me, did I want to come down and watch the case? And I said, yeah, sure, I'd like to do that, but there's no way. I mean, he said, you come down as my law clerk and you sit next to me and then you hear the trial. John Dean was testifying, and John Dean was, to my way of looking, the most persuasive witness. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody better than he was. And when it came time for me to actually do my real job as a law clerk, I went to the judge's elevator to go up, back up to where our offices were. And his wife got in the elevator with me, and she asked me, what did I think about John Dean? And so I said something like, he was interesting. And I said that because I hadn't yet figured out, processed what my reaction was to the man. And she said, I didn't believe a word he said either. And I was taken aback. Now, Rusty Wing was of the view that that was a case that should have gone forward against John Mitchell, the Attorney General, and Maurice Stans, who was involved in raising funds for the campaign. It was called CREEP, Committee to Re-elect the President, and it was Richard Nixon. And the interesting thing about this was that he presented evidence, but he couldn't get the other evidence. For example, there were tapes and so forth that would have been helpful to his case. There were questions about one of the jurors, because the entire case was, they were all put away anonymously and nobody could know who they were. So there were things about this case that bothered him as a prosecutor, but he sort of set the tone, because a number of the assistant U.S. attorneys from that office in New York became the prosecutors in D.C. with very different results against those who were involved with Nixon, including the tape recordings that a guy named Butterfield disclosed at a Senate hearing. So this is a long way to say that the office, through its U.S. attorney, was actually investigating and prosecuting the boss of the Department of Justice. That's unusual. That's unusual politically. It's unusual in every other way. Now, another case that strikes me is I served under 2 U.S. attorneys. One was Paul Curran, and he was a wonderful prosecutor. He was very capable. He was also very smart at the law. He was a Republican. He hired me as an assistant U.S. attorney, and you know, I was a young Democrat then, but there was no secret about it. So in other words, politics didn't matter to the appointment of the prosecutor. He was involved in a case of a large narcotics case, and the New York Times had asked if anyone could convict this guy who was traveling in all sorts of drugs, making millions of dollars a week, circulating drugs through New York. And they called him the Untouchable. And what happened was Carter heard that, read the New York Times Magazine cover, and you may have seen the cover in which Leroy Nicky Barnes is standing there and he's putting on a pose, and they're saying he's beaten all these other cases, and can you get him this time? And straight from the President to the Attorney General to Bob Fisk, he said, you've got to do something about it. And the message was, you have to try the case. And so he joined 2 other assistants in trying that case. And he tried it, and it was very difficult, and by the end of the time, they did convict him. Now, this is important in this way. Neither of these 2 cases were sure things. One was lost, but it should have been brought. It was, and it made a difference down the road. The second case mattered as well because it did put a chill in the narcotics game. And it's sort of like the war against narcotics is a war that continues. So what do these two anecdotes from my personal experience coming up to New York have to do with anything involving the current state of affairs with Trump and Kamala Harris? And the answer is Kamala Harris is a prosecutor like Rusty and like Bob and like all the best who ever do this job. And that is that she has a point of view. She has a standard to pursue, and she is fighting. She fights at the rallies. She fights when she's in interviews. And when I say fight, I mean she brings the argument. She brings the power. She doesn't mince words. I joke from time to time that my greatest strength and my weakness is my clarity of expression. She's that way. She is that person. Her mind works clearly enough to understand what is the point that should be expressed, and it is expressed. And that's really critical. Tim Walsh has shown himself to do the same thing. And I think we're seeing the effect on Trump even now, as day by day he seems to withdraw away from the fight because I think he can't do it. I once saw a fight between Muhammad Ali's daughter and a very worthy contender, and it was in D.C. And the amazing thing was, you know, I could heard some men before they got into the ring saying, "Oh, women fighting." Well, I don't know if you've ever seen his daughter fight, but let me tell you, she was a powerhouse, and she was fast, and she was strong. And the woman she was fighting was also both martial arts and a boxer. And at one point, I think it was in the second round, there was such a rain of punches from Ali that the other person turned her back on the punches. Now, am I saying that Kamala is that kind of person? I'm saying she is. She has the energy, she has the strength, she has the will, she wants to make a difference, and she's going to make a difference. We're going to win this sucker, and we're going to put that guy back in the courtrooms, defending himself in criminal cases, and paying out money he has to pay, and paying again for abusing another woman. Now, I'd like to say I could spin around. Well, I could spin around. I'm going to spin around and say this is the Edison Hotel, and I'm glad that we could join each other. And I don't know what my story will be tomorrow, because we're here tomorrow and we go back on Thursday. So I just wanted to pass on a few words with you. But the bottom line is, as a defense counsel, I've been in this group, the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and one of our mottos is that we describe ourselves as liberty's last champions. This expression also can be applied to prosecutors because they do their job when they do justice, not when they just win, when they do justice, when they do the right thing. There was a judge presiding over the proceedings this evening down at the Moynihan Federal Courthouse near Foley Square and on Pearl Street. And he was talking about how these days people don't try cases, they plead cases. They convince people they can treat them so much badly and with great difficulty if they don't plead guilty. And so they're trying fewer cases. Therefore, they don't know how to try cases. And that's not the justice system. We see errors made every time by judges and participants. And if there's no way to test it by having trials, then you're going to have injustices done all the time. And we have a lot of that now, and the newspapers in recent days have been full of it. I expect that Garland will get his ass kicked out of the Justice Department with a new administration. And I can think of 10 people right off the top of my head that should be there. I don't have any prejudice for any one of them. But I do have one prejudice, that we can't have a know-nothing law enforcement officer at the top of the Department of Justice. So that's what I got to say. And maybe I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.